Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to another Monday of Arnie's Fantasy Sports. And we are 1 week away. Here it is, August the 24th, a Monday. Next Monday is the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And so I want to spend some time this morning talking to you about who to play, who to fade, who to trade for. What do you do with these guys that just haven't performed this year? And there's two schools of thought, maybe more, at least two. On one side, the season's been underway now for a month, and there's only a month to go. And so, though it's a small sample size, albeit, it's still half the season, and players who have not Good morning, Walter. Players who have not contributed to what we expect out of them, what do we do with them now? Now, is it time to drop them? Is it time to trade them? Is it time to whatever? I'm in a league very competitively, 8 teams, okay? 8 teams. And so it's a different animal, but it's a lot of fun because typically all your players are pretty good. But on waivers this year, so far, now this is just so far, Jose Altuve and Javier Baez. Contreras, catcher for Chicago, went on waivers yesterday. Now, you would not see that in a 15-team, 12-team league in all likelihood, but that's what we've got, and that's 2020 baseball, fantasy and reality. So I want to go through some players with you this morning. And if you get your input, and Walter Matuza's in the chatting with me on Facebook and on StreamYard rather. And I just say to you, Walter, I was really disappointed the Yankees and Mets did not play this weekend. I'm not a Mets fan at all. You can see what's behind me. I'm a Yankees fan from way back, and I was counting on some wins against the Mets. Didn't happen, didn't play, and now I read this morning and read over the weekend that the Yankees and Aaron Boone are saying that you could probably expect 2 doubleheaders next weekend. So instead of 3 games Friday through Sunday of next weekend, we're looking now at 5 between the Yankees and the Mets. In order to make up some of these games, talking about making up games, and before I get into players, I want to talk about the Cardinals. They've really been playing well. They take 3 out of 4 from the Reds over the weekend. Dylan Carlson hits his first major league home run yesterday for the Redbirds. Yeah, that's right. Dylan Carlson, who had been struggling, got 2 hits yesterday. Yadi Molina. Now, talk about a Renaissance man. I love Renaissance men. Here you go. Molina and the Cardinals. Molina had been infected with COVID. The Cardinals hadn't played, the 5 games until they started back. And then yesterday, Yadi Molina, the catcher for the Cardinals, goes 4 for 4. I mean, that to me is kudos beyond kudos. So the Cardinals looking really good. The Cubs, I don't know if you watched that White Sox Cub game yesterday. The Cubs win 2-1. A lot of things going on there. It was almost like a playoff game. It had that feel to it. Yu Darvish was on top of the world. Dylan Cease pitched pretty well for the White Sox. Got into the bullpens, and the Cub bullpen prevailed. Cubs won 2-1. So it was a great game to watch yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw it, but Darvish struck out the side late in the game. The White Sox only had 7 hits. The Cubs only had 3, but fortunately for the Cubs, one of those was a 2-run homer by Kyle Schwarber, which was the game winner. The Cubs as a team just are not hitting, but the Cubs as a team just keep winning. And this morning, and as I always like to do, I like to look at the standings with you and go through those. We're going to do that in just a moment as soon as I can pull it up. The great thing about electronics is when they work, right? Looking at the standings, let's start in the National League. I've got Cubs in the Central at 17-10, a 3-game lead over the Cardinals. They lead the Brewers and the Reds by 5.5, the Pirates by 8.5, and we'll talk about a Pirate player in just a few minutes. The Dodgers out west, winners of 4 in a row. The Dodgers hit 7 home runs yesterday on Kobe Bryant Day at Dodger Stadium. 7 home runs. They've won 4 in a row. They're 9 winners of their last 10 games. They're 22-8, the best record in all of baseball. Let's see here. Just lost my place. They lead the Padres by 4 games. The Padres have won 7 in a row. No other team in that division has a winning record. The Rockies, who were hot beginning, have lost 7 straight. So you got the Dodgers and the Padres, who would be playoff teams today. But look at that National League East. Okay, talk about up for grabs. Atlanta, 16-12, but they've won 5 of their last 10. Miami falling back now, 11-11. The Mets, 12-14. The Nats, 11-14. The Phillies, 10-14. The Phillies, did you watch that Atlanta game last night? To end the game, Roman Quinn hits cutoff man Didi Gregorius, who throws home. They cut down Dansby Swanson at the plate on a bang-bang play. They review it, uphold the call. He's out. The game ends. Swanson's run would have tied the game and sent it into extras, or at least continued the game if it didn't go extras. But the Phillies win, and what Joe Girardi said, it was a must-win for us. All 5 teams in the National League East are within 4 games of one another as we sit here on August 24th. So the Central looks like it could be the Cubs and the Cardinals. No shock there. The West, the Dodgers and the Padres. And then you've got to have a winner out of the East. And then you got 3 more wild cards. So it's going to be an interesting take going down the stretch to see. Now, the Mets, they'll have a lot of makeup games now that they've had this time off. The Cardinals have the most makeup games. Let's look at the American League this morning. As we look at the American League West, there's one other team in the major leagues that's won 20 games as of right now, and it's the Oakland Athletics. Oakland 20-9. They've won 7 of their last 10. They lead the Astros by 4.5, and nobody else is close. Texas in 3rd place, 9 games out. The Astros are 15-13. The Astros were just swept this weekend by the San Diego Padres. So the Padres won 7 in a row. Look, they swept the Rangers, then they swept the Astros. I think Fernando Tatis's energy is not only infectious, it's contagious. It's going through that clubhouse. Manny Machado has been on fire lately the last 5 games. Houston, 7 winners of their last 10 games, but they have lost 3 in a row. Looking at the Central, this is where it gets really interesting to me. I've said all along, I don't really trust the Minnesota Twins pitching. I've never doubted they can hit the baseball. The Twins, as we wake up on Monday, August 24th, are 19-10. They have a 1.5-game lead over Cleveland and a 2-game lead over the White Sox. Now, the Cleveland Indians, we know all about the Plesac Clevenger issue, violating team curfew, violating team rules. Good morning, King Hat. It's good to see you on this morning. But we know all about Clevenger and Plesac, and we know what good pitchers they are, yet Cleveland has done better since they've been out of the lineup than while they were in it. We got a week to go before the trade deadline. I've always thought, since this happened, it's going to be really hard for Clevenger and Plesac to go back into that locker room. It's one thing to make a mistake. It's another to make a mistake and then not be truthful about it with your teammates. So I'm looking for Cleveland in the next week to trade both Plesac and Clevenger. We've talked about that on previous shows. I'm not going to rehash all of that this morning. But I think those are moves that can be and probably will be made over the next week. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if at any time those trades were announced. We'll see. And in the American League East, The Yankees trail the Rays by a game. The Rays are 19-10. We know the Yankees did not play this weekend. They are 16-9. They will have some games to make up. The Rays have played 29 games, almost half their schedule. The Yankees have played 25. Orioles and the Blue Jays are sitting both at 500, both 4.5 games out. Boston, the first team to lose 20. They're 9-20. They've lost 2 in a row. They're trading away their bullpen. I look for them to trade JD Martinez this week, free up some salary if they can. I look for him to go to a National League team. You know, and I was thinking about, I'm not sure what the package could look like for JD Martinez, but can you imagine JD Martinez in a Cub uniform? Just think. So those are our standings. And I want to go over with you this morning some players that were probably drafted fairly high who have been playing really low. And I want to start out, we talked about the Oakland A's, and who sit with the, second best record in all of baseball at 20-9. That's a .690 percentage, .690. Wow. And Oakland, typically a team that starts out not hitting very much at all. Well, they're not hitting. Chapman's hitting .256. That's probably the best of the bunch. Now, Kano's been hitting pretty well for them. But when we talk about Chris Davis with a K, he's on the bench. Marcus Semien, not even close to last year. And then there's Matt Olson. Matt Olson, as we wake up this morning, among the league leaders in home runs and RBIs, 9 homers, 20 RBIs. He scored 19 runs. He's walking more than normal, striking out less than last year, percentage-wise. But he's only hitting .170. And over his last 5 games, he's 3 for 18 with a .167 average. That's about where he is for the season, with 1 home run in those 5 games and 4 RBIs. So my question is, with Matt Olson, and I want to contrast him for just a moment to a Philadelphia Philly first baseman, Rhys Hoskins. Hoskins hitting only .224. He also has scored 19 runs. He has 2 homers, only 9 RBIs. Again, he's hitting .224. But over his last 5 games, Hoskins is 5 for 16 with a .313 average. And we know Rhys Hoskins is a streaky hitter. So how do you compare and contrast Olson to Hoskins? One a left-handed bat, one a right-handed bat. The left-handed bat Olson plays in a pitcher's park if there's ever been one in Oakland. Rhys Hoskins plays in a hitter's park in Philadelphia. I think you keep both of them. And here's why. Olson's not going to hit .170. With him walking more, striking out less, he's putting the ball in play. And what if over the next half, let's say at the end of the season, he winds up with a .240 batting average, which I think is realistic. Well, if he's going to hit .240 for the year and he hit .170 the first half, he's got to hit about .310 to end the season. And I think that's a probability by the fact when you look at the hard hit rates, walk rates, strikeout rates, his numbers should be better. You also hang on to Hoskins. He hits second in that Philadelphia order. Second. That's a good offensive team. And their pitching is going to get better. Look, the Phillies went out. Can't blame them for trying, right? I'm not so sure Workman is the answer, but they deal with Boston to try to shore up a bullpen that if the season ended today, the Philadelphia Philly bullpen has the highest earn run average of any bullpen in the history of the sport. So they go and pick up 2 relievers, and they win last night. It was a great defensive gem from Quinn to D.D. Gregorius to home, but hey, it worked. I'm just saying, look at the players, look at the underlying numbers, and when you do, I think you'll agree that Matt Olson and Rhys Hoskins, both first basemen that you should keep. Now, talk about some more players. The decision is yours. I'm just laying it out there. What about Mike Moustakas? Mike Moustakas traded to Cincinnati. He's a 250, 260 hitter in his career. We know that. He's a World Series champion. He's owned in almost every fantasy league. And he's won for his last 9. And he's hitting 212 on the year with only 2 home runs and only 8 RBIs. Are you a believer that Cincinnati, who went out in the offseason, they supposedly improved their pitching, supposedly improved their lineup, they're 4 games under 500. Do you think Moustakas can turn it around in the last month? And I think he can. He's third base, second base eligible. He's going to get playing time as long as he stays healthy. Of course, that's the case with anybody, right? As long as they stay healthy, they're going to play. And he's not a 212 kind of hitter. Keep him. Trade for him. Here's the thing. Somebody in your league owns these guys I'm talking about this morning. They're ultimately frustrated with them. And do you think a trade, let's throw this out there. You don't like to do this. What about if you own Solano for the Giants, whose average now is down to 363? Remember, it wasn't long ago, it was at 424. How about a Solano for a Moustakas? I think it's a great trade if I'm going to get Moustakas in that trade. I think you look at players who started really hot. Face it, most players don't hit 400 more than a month. And when that happens, they go down quickly. Solano's average has dropped almost 80%, or 80 points, excuse me. Moustakas will not be a 280 hitter. Moustakas will not be a 300 hitter. But could he hit 300 for a streak to get his average up to 240, 250? And the answer is yes. For you Chicago Cub fans out there listening, and I know there are some, there's several disappointments going on here. There's Chris Bryant, who's on the IL with a damaged ring finger. I can't remember if it's just injured or broken. I think it's just injured. He's out till probably sometime next week. Good morning, Brad Matthews. And then there's Javi Baez. How many of you fantasy owners drafted Javi Baez in the first 2 or 3 rounds of your draft, and you're looking at Javi Baez, and he's hitting 200 this morning with 3 home runs, 10 RBIs. Over his last 5 games, he's 3 for 16 with a 188 average. And I'm watching the game yesterday between the Cubs and the White Sox, and Steve Stone, the announcer, said on a pitch that was a hanging slider, Baez fouled it off, and Stone said, if Baez were hot right now, that ball would have gone either out of the park or would have been a line drive somewhere for an extra base hit. Instead, it was a foul ball. But that's it. It was a foul ball. And so Javi Baez is not that far away. And he's 3 for his last 10. Now, small sample, but 3 for his last 10 means he's hitting 300 over his last 3 games. That's 100 points higher than what Javi Baez is hitting this season. And now I want to get to when you drafted your fantasy teams this year. And let's say you had a top 5 pick in a redraft league. And there's Trout, and there's Acuna, and there's Christian Yelich. And Trout has been, well, Trout. And I saw where his baseball card yesterday sold for over $3 million. Yeah, there you go. And Acuna's been on the IL. And hopefully back soon. And Yelich has not been on the IL, but he has not been Yelich. CY is hitting 194, 7 home runs, 15 RBIs. He's 4 for his last 19 over 5 games. That's a 211 average. This weekend against the Pirates, he goes 1 for 11. That's an 091 average against the Pirates. I didn't say against the Braves. I didn't say against the Cubs. I didn't say against the Dodgers. I said against the Pirates. Who are 7-17, 8.5 games behind in their division, but they beat the Brewers 3 straight this weekend. What's wrong with Yelich? And if and when will Yelich turn it around? Here's how bad it's gotten for Yelich. Last night I made a trade offer. Why not? So I offered Christian Yelich for Jacob deGrom, thinking deGrom really hasn't had a deGrom season. The Yelich hadn't had one either. So why not put them in a different environment virally, and let's see how they do. Well, the guy I offered the trade to responds and says, I don't want Yelich. I want Trey Turner. So now Yelich value. Can you trade and get him in your league? Because if you can trade and get him, there's no sign of injury here. Go get him. Go get him now. Again, I offered him for deGrom, and the deGrom owner said, I won't trade him for Yelich, but I'll trade him for Trey Turner. I'm not knocking Trey Turner. I think it's an indictment on what CY has done so far in 2020. And if you can get him in your league, go trade for him. While I'm on the downside this morning, these are all values, okay? I'm giving you these players because I think it's time to go trade and get them. Because a lot of times, I was listening to a radio show this morning, getting ready for this one. I listen to a lot of stuff all at one time. I got radios going everywhere. And a baseball card was an issue. And I've heard so many times, typically, superstars will play to what their baseball cards say. And if that's the case, every player we've already talked about this morning is a player you should go and be interested in getting. Here's another one. George Springer for the Astros, who's hitting 200, 4 homers, 15 RBIs. Not a George Springer year so far. Relatively healthy. Over his last 5 games, he's 4 for 20, exactly 200. That's exactly what he's hitting for the entire season. But atop of that Astro lineup, which is still pretty good, and Michael Brantley came back, and Altuve's starting to hit a little bit. And Kyle Tucker, I think he's better than his numbers have said so far. His numbers haven't been bad, but he's been better than that. Springer's going to do better. Springer, Yelich, Javier Baez, these are all values. Go trade for them now in your fantasy league. Now I want to give you 2 at the end. I'm going to go through a DFS scenario with you in just a moment. But I got 2 players here. One you can probably go get. And here's one I'm just not carried away with this year. Eduardo Escobar. Now, everyone else I've talked about, Springer and Yelich and Javier Baez and Moustakas and Hoskins and Olsen, I've said they're values. Go get them. I challenge you, is Eduardo Escobar in that same group? He's hitting 188. Look, Escobar, 30 homer plus seasons the last 2 years. Played in Arizona. He's hitting 188 with 3 homers and 15 RBIs. Over his last 5 games, he's 3 for 19. That's a 158 average. 30 points below his season average. Is Escobar a value, or is Escobar someone that you should send to the waiver wire? I'm more inclined of all the players I've talked about so far to say, if I were going to dump anyone, it would be Escobar. Here's a player that I think you should add. He's only hitting 151 on the season. Okay? But a few years ago, he was a highly touted prospect. He's an outfielder. He's got all the tools. He's had some injuries, but it appears now he's healthy. And Gregory Polanco for the Pirates over the weekend against the Brewers played in all 3 games. He went 5 for 10. He scored 3 runs. He stole 2 bases. He hit 2 home runs, and he drove in 5. Polanco, I think, with the trade deadline looming, would be a great player to go and trade for in reality. I think he's a great player to add in fantasy. So I'm going to suggest to you that when it comes to Gregory Polanco, take a good look at him, and I would add him in fantasy. I want to spend the last few minutes this morning talking about DFS for today. I want to first start with 2 starting pitchers I want you to consider. One, pretty obvious, Lance Lynn. He's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball this year. Okay? He's averaged 26 points over his last 6 starts. He's never scored less than 19 points. And he faces an A's team tonight that has a 25% strikeout rate versus right-handed pitchers in 2020. Also, Brad Keller, whose price I believe is $6,700. He faces a Cardinals team, and the Cardinals team who has struggled against right-handed pitchers. St. Louis has a 24.1% K percentage versus right-handed pitchers. And outside of Paul Goldschmidt and Tyler O'Neill, no Cardinal has over a 300 on-base average against right-handed pitching in 2020. So those are my 2 pitchers for the day, Lance Lynn and Brad Keller. Now let's look at some players. Matt Davidson facing a left-hander today in Milwaukee. Davidson cannot hit right-handers, but he mashes lefties. I know he only has 17 plate appearances against left-handers this year, but in that small sample, he has a .563 on-base average with an 84, let's check this out, 84.4% contact rate. He faces left-hander Brett Anderson on Monday and will bat third in one of the best hitting parks in all of the US of A. Continuing on that theme of a right-handed Cincinnati Red, Eugenio Suarez. I think Suarez, who hit a homer yesterday, could also go deep today. He has a .401 on-base average against left-handers since the start of 2019. Anderson has a .540 ERA at home this season. To me, Davidson will be cheap. Suarez not a lot more expensive, but they're great picks today in DFS. Now, Anthony Rendon, a little higher price here, but he just keeps on hitting. He's in prime form. The Angels face a left-handed pitcher in Framber Valdez tonight. And since the start of 2019, Rendon has a .426 on-base average, a .298 ISO versus left-handers, and an 86.1% contact rate, a 45.8% hard hit rate against lefties. David Fletcher, nothing flashy, but he just keeps putting up points. He'll bat leadoff against Framber Valdez. He has an insane, 94.6% contact versus left-handed pitchers since the start of last year. So if he swings, he hits it. Fletcher, 4,600. Yuli Gurriel. He'll bat fifth. He'll face a lefty. And Gurriel has a 93.5% contact rate this year against left-handers. This is your DFS lineup, guys. You got to listen to this stuff. Phil Chaplin, if you're out there, I know you're listening. Ian Happ playing at Detroit, $3,900. He'll bat leadoff. And I know it's Casey Mize. But against right-handed pitching this year, Hap has a 477 OBA, a 44.1% hard hit rate. Cole Calhoun against Colorado. Remember, the Rockies have lost 7 in a row. And the Diamondbacks will take on rookie pitcher, right-hander Ryan Castellini, who gave up 5 runs to the Astros in his last time out. Cole Calhoun, left-handed batter Cole Calhoun, has been feasting on right-handers. He has a 296 ISO, a 49% hard hit rate against lefties. Calhoun will be batting leadoff. It's a no-brainer. And finally, I mentioned him earlier, Kyle Tucker. He'll probably bat cleanup against the Angels. In 31 plate appearances against left-handers, Tucker has a 45.8% hard hit rate, a 364 on base average, and at $3,800, Kyle Tucker's a steal. So those are my DFS plays for today. Players who've been struggling, who you should try to trade for and definitely keep. I'll be back here tomorrow with you. It's been a great morning. Everybody have a great day. It's a shorter slate today in Major Leagues. Tomorrow will be a full slate again, but we'll be back here tomorrow morning on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network and Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. I want everybody to have a great day.